Okay, we're back. And as you can see, the flurry is kind of all poofed up, just about like it should be. It's helped everything incorporate and kind of get started on rising. Just to go over what we've done already, we took a cup of warm water, not anything over about 108, 110 degrees. You want it warm to help activate the yeast. We put a cup of warm water in there, a tablespoon of yeast, so about a tablespoon to tablespoon and a half of olive oil, and a third of a cup of flour. Now I haven't measured how much flour I've used making this in a long time, so we're both going to learn something here today, and that's precisely about, it's going to always vary on the temperature, humidity, elevation, how much flour you're going to put in, and how thick or how thin you like your crust as well. The thinner you like your crust, the less flour you're going to use so you can stretch it out a little more. We like a real thin crust, so if you like a thicker crust, you may want to consider adding a little more flour than what we do. We're going to add that in there. We're going to get it to about the consistency that we want, and then we're going to let it set for another 20 minutes to let the gluten interact and do what gluten does. And then after that, then we'll come back and we'll knead it for about 8 minutes. I mean, not that we need it for the pizza, but I mean knead it, with our hands, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here in a minute. So the other ingredients we're going to put in, we've got about a tablespoon of garlic. This is actually granules. Just don't use the garlic salt, is my opinion on that. Some onion powder, some fine sweet basil, 2 tablespoons of the fine sweet basil, a tablespoon of everything else, maybe just a little light on a full tablespoon of the salt. Too much salt can actually stop the yeast from rising. So the salt will really be about the last thing that we add in here. So we're going to put in our 2 tablespoons of crushed basil. That'll add some flavor, and it'll also give it a little look. People ask, ooh, what's that in there? I don't know, something spilled, I don't know what it was. Yeah, but it'll, you can even smell the basil, and if you let that go in there, it'll actually, you want some liquid to go in there to help reconstitute the basil leaves so that it actually spreads into the dough itself a little bit. Then we'll put in the onion powder and the garlic, in any order with those two is fine. The basil I always like to put in first just so that it gets an opportunity to absorb some of the liquid in there. Get in if you want to probably even go 3 tablespoons of the basil, but now we'll go ahead and add in the salt. You're saying, oh, the salt's not that good for it. If you don't put salt in your dough and your bread products, you'll have a cardboard tasting, even with the other stuff in there. If you don't have the salt, you'll have a cardboard-like tasting pizza dough. Okay, now we're going to start adding the flour in. And I use a big fork like this. When I was young growing up, my mom had a fork, a little different, but similar to that she used. So today we're going to do what we can. There's 2. We've already put 1/3 of a cup in. Now we've put 2/3 of a cup in. And I think we'll probably come close to putting a couple cups of flour in here altogether before we're done, but we'll see. There's 2/3 of a cup. It'll easily take more. I like to add just 1/3 of a cup at a time. That way it's easier to make sure you're getting the right amount and not too much flour. It's easy to add more flour. It's really difficult if you've added too much flour to add more liquid into it. So we've got a whole cup of flour in there now. So now we're going to start on that second cup. There's 1/3 of a cup of flour. So we've got 1 1/3 cups in there now. Generally, I'm going to say that I probably add a full 1/3 of a cup of flour into the dough as I'm kneading it. So this will, yeah, that's still real, almost a thick batter. So there's 2/3 of the cup. There's 1 2/3 cup of flour in there altogether now. And this is going to be real close to what we want for this first little resting period for the gluten to work. Learned this from one of the chefs on the Food Network channel. He was the one that said, do your slurry, incorporate all your flour, let it set at 20 minutes, and then knead it. A lot of people just go right from here right into the kneading, but I've found that I think you get a little better crust by doing it that way. I'm going to take and put, I don't want to put a whole third, so I'm going to try and get that to about as close to a half of a third as I can there. Needs a little more flour, but I think 1/3 of a cup would be just a little too much. A different day that may take a little more, may take a little less. We might end up putting another 1/3 of a cup in there. Nah, we'll let that go. So, just to recap, we've done our slurry, let it set for a few minutes. We've added 1/3 cup short of 2 cups of flour in there. We've got our basil, we've got our garlic granules, we've got our onion powder, we've got our salt, and what am I forgetting? Garlic, salt, 4 items in there that we put in. I did the olive oil, which we put in when we made this slurry on there. So we're going to get a warm, wet towel to put over this. And we're going to let that set for about 20 minutes, so about 5:25. We'll be back.